States. The Vice President of the United States is Mike Pence, and he joins us this morning live. Mr. Vice President, it's nice to see you.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome to the White House.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Let's talk about the president's speech last night. He's getting applause from a lot of people, some criticism. A lot of the criticism I'm hearing this morning deals with specifics. For example, he says he's going to send more troops to Afghanistan, but he didn't say how many and what timeline he would use for them being there. You were a key part of the discussions that led to this new strategy. How many troops are going?
Well, the answer to that, I think, will be based on the conditions on the ground, which is the fundamental change in the approach that our president has taken to Afghanistan. I mean, in the past, in the last administration in particular, we had a changing strategy and changing tactics on the ground. There were artificial timetables for withdrawal. What President Trump has made what President Trump has made clear here is that conditions on the ground, the drive toward a stable and peaceful Afghanistan will drive American policy and will drive American decisions in the region.
You say this is a departure from the policies of the past, the Obama administration. The editor of Breitbart tweeted after the speech last night, quote, Trump's Afghanistan speech was Obama's speech minus the deadline and the details. He's saying that this speech is this strategy is very similar to the strategy of Barack Obama.
No, the truth is that the last administration engaged in a short-term surge in Afghanistan and then announced a timetable for withdrawal, literally emboldening the enemies. I mean, when you look at Afghanistan and Pakistan, it's literally, that region is home to 20 different terrorist organizations that are recognized by our national government. But we haven't been sending a clear signal about American commitment and resolve. And after an exhaustive review, taking in the input not only of all of his generals, but of our key diplomats and State Department and all of our experts in the region, President Trump sent a message of resolve and commitment. He said to the people of Afghanistan, we are with you. He said to Pakistan that they need to step up. He's calling on India to be a better and more strategic partner. This is a whole new regional strategy for South Asia, and it's all driving toward the objective of a stable and peaceful Afghanistan in the long term.
With all due respect, without numbers and without a timeline, isn't this an extremely open-ended commitment to a war that's already dragged on for 16 years?
Well, as you're aware, the Pentagon in June made a request for some nearly 4,000 troops to deploy in the region.
Is that the number?
I think it's yet to be seen, and we'll certainly be making that information available as the president receives recommendations. But let me be very clear about this. What the president has decided is to deploy a sufficient number of troops at the brigade level in Afghanistan to assist the Afghans who are in the lead, who are at the tip of the spear in this fight, to assist them in their fight against the Taliban, in their fight against the Haqqani network, Al-Qaeda, ISIS that are there, and also the president's going to make available additional air combat resources using those brigade level personnel to call in that firepower. Look, we're there to help the Afghans win. The president made a commitment that we're going to be there until we win. And the American troops, with new rules of engagement, are going to be able to accomplish that there, Matt, just like they're doing in Iraq and in Syria.
On the subject of Pakistan, real quickly, the president said they have to do more. They have to stop harboring terrorists. They have to stop allowing terrorists to operate with free rein within their borders. If they don't toe the line, is it possible he'll go one step further and he'll declare Pakistan a state sponsor of terrorism?
Well, Pakistan just simply needs to do more. We all think back of the time that the mastermind of 9/11, Osama bin Laden, was found living in a compound in Pakistan, literally within just a few short miles of their military academy. We're aware that terrorist elements that attack our troops, attack innocent civilians, and Afghan forces will bring violence, and then they'll race across the border. What the president said last night to Pakistan is that we're putting them on notice. They need to step up as a partner, and if they want to see the United States continue to partner with them for security in the region, they need to do more to confront the terrorist organizations that are using particularly northern Pakistan, the Waziristan area, as a safe haven.
Let me ask you about some other items in the news. Mr. Vice President, have you ever met a neo-Nazi or a white nationalist or white supremacist that you consider to be a fine person?
Never in my life. have I met anyone associated with white supremacists or KKK or the neo-Nazi movement that I would have anything other than contempt for.
So when the president made his comments following
honestly, Matt,
Charlottesville,
I can't remember meeting people in that category. I see them on television, and as the president has made clear, we have denounced those organizations.
Well, but the president said that there were fine people on both sides of that rally in Charlottesville. So when he said those words, you obviously didn't agree with them. Did they offend you, those words?
Say again.
Well, obviously, the president said he thought there were fine people on both sides of that rally in Charlottesville. So when he said that, you've just told me you don't agree with that. Did those words offend you?
The president and I were very clear last weekend in the wake of the terribly tragic events in Charlottesville that we denounce bigotry and hatred and violence in all of its forms.
But he said there were fine people on both sides of that rally.
The president specifically denounced white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and the KKK repeatedly. And he did it when he denounced hate and violence on Saturday. He did it in his address to the nation Monday, and he did it again in the press conference Tuesday. There was no moral equivalency drawn by the president.
And yet when David Duke heard the comments made by the president on Charlottesville, he thanked the president. How can you be thanked by David Duke, a white supremacist, and not be on completely the wrong side of the issue?
I can't account for the views of that person or their opinions. The president disavowed David Duke long ago, and we disavow him as well. The point is what I think is disconcerting to the American people are first the views of these bigots that, again, in his speech last night, the president rejected. And he likened America to our military personnel, and he said that when one has patriotism in your heart, there's no room for bigotry or hatred. And that's the value, that's the core of this president, it's the core of this administration.
You are a loyal defender of this president, and you should be commended for that. But other top Republican leaders have rebuked him. Top military leaders have rebuked him. Business leaders have rebuked him for his comments on Charlottesville, and you continue to defend him. Are you putting your loyalty above and in front of what's in your heart and your gut?
Matt, I know this president. I know his heart, and I heard him. I heard him on the day that the Charlottesville tragedy happened, when he denounced hate and violence in all of its forms, from wherever it comes. I heard him on that Monday, and I heard him as well on Tuesday, like millions of Americans did, where he condemned the hate and the bigotry that was evidenced there. He
but
condemned
went back to saying
the
there's blame on both sides.
That was there, and we'll continue to do that. But look, we understand. We understand that criticism comes with this job, and this president has the kind of broad shoulders to be able to take it. But last night, I thought what you heard the president do, in addition to announcing a new strategy that we believe is going to advance the security and safety of the American people, advance stability in South Asia for this generation and the next. But I think you also heard the president do what he'll continue to do, and that is call America to unity. That we need to come together around our soldiers. We need to come together around our most vulnerable, and we need to come together because, as the president often says, when we're united, there's nothing the people of the United States of America can't accomplish.
I could sit here and talk about this with you for a couple of hours, but they are telling me that it is time to wrap. So I will say, Vice President Pence, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate it.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.